right. Hello and welcome, everyone, to the first official chunk or vlog of the R&R show. The R&R show, researching and revealing. And I'm your host, the one God operator, because Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord our God is one. Amen. Blessed is the name of his glorious kingdom for all eternity. Amen. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your resources, etc. Amen. And I and my Father are one. Amen. Ras Ariel Tafari speaking, welcoming you all. And we approve of this message. Now, for the very best standard practices and procedures, we shall, first of all, become clearly cognizant of our actual real-time position within the cycles of life right now. So it's 8:07 p.m. on a Saturday evening. That is a B period, and it's the 14th of September 2024. It's a 3.5 day positive long lunar unit. And we had a high tide at the nearest maritime location at 6:30 p.m. today. Seeing that it's 8:07 now, that would equate a negative short lunar unit and a positive long lunar unit, thus equaling a neutral unit. And I personally am in the first annual life cycle period right now, and in the sixth simple period of overall human life that ranges from age 35 to 42, being 36 years young at this time. Hallelujah. Now, this has been in the making for quite some time, folks. The R&R show, it stands for researching and revealing. And obviously, automatically, through the wisdom gained through scientific experimentation during the day, right? Operating wisely. And then, right about now in the evenings, taking time to reflect on what happened, how things happened, and paying attention to certain cosmic impulses or listening to the holy breath where there's edification and clarification about details pertaining to how the day went, what type of things happened, and then higher divine instruction and guidance being given in the time of self-reflection, usually in the evenings before resting, that leads to further insight into exactly how the universe works systematically. And that is basically expressed within the cycles of life, and we gain more and more insight into this. Okay, so the overall format is, and the overall basic mode of operation really is scientific experimentation during the day and during the 24/7 really. Yet we're supposed to rest from creative work on Saturday. Okay. basically science, right? Science being defined as a proper application of wisdom. Okay, so what I'm saying is, and a lot of what I'm referring to is information that is in a book called Self Mastery and Fate with the Cycles of Life by H. Spencer Lewis. Rest in peace. Get a copy of this, read, study, and apply the wisdom that's written therein, and you will prosper big time. So, in seeking to make wisdom be our guide, right? And of course, Jah guide, right? In seeking to operate in harmony with the cycles of life as much as possible, you basically practice a certain amount of daily discipline, and that is quite simply just safely navigating, every couple of minutes or hours at the minimum, you check your watch, see what time it is, what daily period it is of the cycles of life, and you identify what is propitious to be accomplished and what isn't. And you seek to accomplish what is propitious and it's cosmically supported, and you're basically successful. Now, I'm going to have to actually just use really plain English here because sometimes it helps to get the point presented better than seeking to very, very, very attentively use the better sort of formulations of things having to do with something called ITAL speech, or a more refined usage of the English language that avoids the sort of inferior word sound and power that stems from how the English language has words in it that have definitions that are actually negative. That's a different subject. Generally, we seek to keep clean speech. Okay. Now, the thing is that scientific experimentation is what a magi or a seer or a potential master is busy with. Now, the title of master basically refers to someone who has the ability, folks, and this is truly great. This is absolutely beautiful. The ability to master his or her destiny, even his or her divine destiny, on a daily basis. This is accomplished through a certain amount of discipline and actually, quite simply, exactly what I did at the beginning of this video, where I checked the time using the real time, and that is the winter time calculation of time, avoiding using the summertime miscalculation of time where the clocks or time is artificially set forward by an hour, thus establishing a fictitious and a fake condition. What I'm saying is you have to use wintertime calculation at all times to actually have the real time for your area. Because when the clocks are set forward artificially an hour, it's fake. It's not real and it's off. So use wintertime calculation. And you check what time it is and you see what daily period it is, and you know what is to be accomplished in these daily periods. And I'm actually interestingly enough, I'm going to keep going now because here's what's happening, folks. You see this? Yeah. It doesn't really matter if you see it. What I'm saying is that in about 20 minutes, we're entering into a C period. This is a period that's really good for very, very clear insight into all the working mechanisms of life and everything that's going on in our life situation, and being able to totally see through everything and plan perfectly and navigate and operate with super clarity and the most accurate and crystal clear insight and overview into how everything works in life. So we're coming up to that. I'm going to just keep going because I can't pause this either. It's only 20 minutes. So I mentioned divine destiny. And really what's going on is that every one of us, I'm going to just speak for myself now, right? Plain English here. I have certain really, really good, divinely inspired objectives. Most of them having directly to do with the idea of what is called repair of the world, or repairing the breach, or what is known in Hebrew as a tikkun olam, fixing the world. This goes beyond my own situation, yet it's something that probably everyone can relate to, where we see a certain amount of God's perfect plan for all of creation, shall we say, and how we could accomplish and basically hopefully wisely and decently and in an orderly way accomplish the highest good for ourselves and others and all of life involved. So there are great, really great ideas and life's goals that we have that are far above and beyond the average sort of day-to-day calculations of human existence and maintaining it. And so you have divine inspiration, you have a really divine dream or vision or idea. What this actually is that the will of God, as we're creating the image of God and after his own likeness, God is a living man of God, right? The will of God is actually directly communicated to us in the form of thoughts, ideas, impulses, urges, and inspirations. And this should be taken very seriously because it's very easy to underestimate the importance of what God has put on your mind, and the fact that you can accomplish it if you work wisely. And I'm talking about great things, such as total tikkun olam, even having to do with so-called politics, such as actually having there be world peace and collective security and a rule of international morality, a perfect world, potentially. Things that seem like very high goals, yet things that could actually be systematically accomplished, especially using wisdom. So basically, what you have is a certain idea, a divine inspiration, a dream, a good dream, a clean dream, basically is the same thing whether you're in the so-called awakened state like right now, or you're laying in bed resting, dreaming. Whether you have a dream that's very powerful then, or if it's an idea right now, it's basically a cosmic impulse, a divine inspiration, an idea. Okay, what's absolutely critical is actually that you identify when this thought that is particularly powerful, that is like a divine calling or a divine inspiration to accomplish something, usually to creatively accomplish something. It could also be just information from God within, giving you knowledge and insight and actually an overview of what's going on pertaining to something. Or it will be divine instruction or wisdom that will arrive, that will give you the ability to clearly see exactly what the truth is pertaining to whatever it was that you were investigating or trying to figure out. It will become clear to you, right? There's times when anything that you were pondering or trying to figure out or identify the truth about or pertaining to, any question you had whatsoever, will literally become answered or clarified. And this usually happens in a C period, because in a C period, it's a time for the realization of great spiritual truths and a very accurate insight and totally clear vision of how everything works and how anything actually really is. Okay. Yet, what's more important right now is the fact that I have a divine dream. It's a mixture of things that I've either dreamt literally during the dark hours when I was resting and dreaming, and then I've thought about these things, right? Sometimes you have a dream that's very powerful and you awaken, and it could be 3 a.m. and you awaken and you look at your watch and you see, okay, it's 3 a.m. Okay, right. So, what time is it? Okay, it's, such and such a time, it's such and such a daily period. And so you can see, using wisdom, whether or not you should further consider this powerful thought, idea, cosmic impulse, divine inspiration, and whether you should actually seek to act on it and actually accomplish or make it a reality based on when the thought, idea, urge, impulse first arrives and the time wherein it arrives, and then looking at the daily period that this arrived in and identifying whether this is something that is perpetuous at this time, whether or not the impulse to accomplish this particular thing is actually in harmony with the cycles of life or not. If it is, then you should further consider and process it. Write it down. Okay. If it isn't, it seems to be the case that the best thing is to disregard it, because it's just simply not the time. And the first occurrence of this potential thing that would have a life cycle that began at a certain point with basically when you had the idea, it just wasn't the time for that. And so you can see that it wouldn't really bear fruit in the long run. I've tested this. What we're talking about is the very first occurrences of ideas, urges, divine inspirations, a powerful divine thought or something that is like a divine or a cosmic impulse that leads you to consider actually accomplishing this thing and making it a reality. And when it first occurs, so the very first occurrence, it's important to try to map this out and to write down. See, what I'm saying is you could have a dream, you could have a vision, you could have a sudden, a thought to accomplish something, to creatively accomplish something. And if it arrives at the right time to begin with, within a life cycle where it's perpetuous, it should be further considered and it will grow. Whereas if it isn't the time for this thing, you should actually just disregard it and then await further cosmic inspiration, divine inspiration, and instruction, guidance, right? Because everything has a definite beginning, and if it begins at the right time, it will essentially progress and bear good fruits. Whereas if it didn't begin at the right time, it just simply, it's sort of like it's automatic that it won't work out. It just wasn't the time. It's like planting trees at the right time of the year. If you do it at the right time of the year, they're going to grow and bear fruit and so on. And if it isn't the time, and they might germinate, it might work for a while, and it's not really going to work in the long run. Now, I've been paying attention to this for some years now in detail, and it seems to be the case that basically if you have a divine inspiration, a cosmic impulse, right, God's will communicated to you at a certain time where it's a time for this thing. Like, for example, all of a sudden you feel compelled to go on a journey. And then you check and you see, oh, okay, it's a time for short journeys right now, not necessarily for long ones. Okay, we could consider that further. But if it isn't the time for going on journeys, forget about it. It's like clear your mind and just wait for the further cosmic instruction that will arrive, that will then inspire you, and wisdom, and that what is perpetuous, what is in harmony with the life cycle you're in, will automatically be more present, and that will be what actually basically happens. So there's a sort of an automatic divine guidance that's working and operating with wisdom in and through the cycles of life, so that actually, and we see this in retrospect sometimes, things were automatically guided much better than we were able to navigate them, so to say. Okay, so then we have to imagine and actually consider much more of what is actually possible to be accomplished in our lives, because we have a very powerful tool with wisdom to actually accomplish anything, potentially. This is a very serious thing where we have to actually sort of rise above the regular, the mundane sort of interest and really become like broader in outlook, more optimistic, and actually and sort of open up and sort of tune in to the divine real-time communication of thoughts, ideas, divine ideas, impulses, to see. Because we could be busy thinking about, considering, and pondering and mulling over an idea or an inspiration from the past, and there may be an even better way that is communicated to us right now. Yet what is significant is that there are dreams. So there are some dreams you have that you just remember them for years because they were so divine, they were so beautiful, they were so good, that what happens is that idea vision, thought, that was part of what you saw in your dream, basically, even years ago, you remember it and you think about it during the day. And so it's actually as if there's a bridge that's bridging the gap between these two different states, where in the dream state, or what they call the psychic state, it's as if there is no linear time and perception of this linear time thing, where, like when you're taking a nap, you could be dreaming and it seems like it's like forever. And then you awaken and it's like, okay, well, I was there for about a half an hour taking a nap. It seemed like eternity. So there's that state, and the psychic state, and the dream state. It's similarly the case that it's like you're above time. Yet linear time is like how everything is more easily organized by us. Like I look at the watch, now it's 8:31. Okay, at 8:34, technically we enter a C period, so I can see, right? I can navigate using linear time, navigate the cycles of life, right? So what's happening is there's some things that I have dreamt. And, I still have these, there's a few dreams. There's one particular dream I had. Now, notice for a second, because it's the dark hours, if I'm correct, the neurochemistry has also changed, and now we're more interested in talking about dreams and in sort of a dreamy state. And that's okay, because one of the aims of this vlog was to also talk about the most powerful divine inspirations and ideas that we have, to focus on them and to further figure out how to actually make them a reality. In other words, that what is your best divinely inspired thought, idea, divine calling, inspiration to creatively accomplish something, you will remember that. It's like, it's sort of how everybody has a dream and a particular thing that they really would like to accomplish that. And that's something that it's the things that over the years you remember, this dream or this idea. And so finally you begin to really figure out, okay, time is going by. When are we going to actually accomplish the greatest divinely inspired life's goals? And the time is now, because we are working on it. So I had a particular dream once that I remember it to this day. And it's interesting because it came at a time when I wasn't really occupied very much with what I dreamt about. So it was around 2008. I wish I could remember what day and what time it was. I don't remember if I awoke, if I was... So what I'm saying is sometimes you'll have really powerful dreams where you awaken like at 3 a.m. because, whoa, wow, and you're thinking about this and you're asking yourself, is this legit? Is this the mind kind of just processing things, or is this like a direct divine inspiration? Is this like God communicating this to me in the dream, so to say? And then the way to figure that out is if you wake up from such a powerful dream where things are being revealed to you, it's as if you're getting like divine communication and instruction and edification in this dream, and it might be really beyond what you thought was the case pertaining to this or that. Like you could have a dream where it's as if God is like communicating to you and actually telling you, showing you that this is how this is, that's why that's like that, and you think, whoa, really? That's a little different than I thought, yet you know it's true. Okay, but you have to double check this. You have to triple check this. Because what can happen is if you have a dream like that and you wake up and it's, okay, now you're awake. You look at your watch, you see what time it is during that particular day at night. You look at the daily period that it is, and if that particular information or what is presented or what's kind of what was processed, what was divinely inputted into your mind's eye in the dream or even just a vision during the day or whatever it was, if that is something that is like perpetuous at that time, if it's the time for such a thing, then you should regard it and consider it. And if not, disregard it. So you can actually discern. This is the interesting thing. Actually, really, really good is using wisdom. You can actually identify and almost discern direct communications from God within, so as to know when it really is a divine calling, right? Imagine, because this is important, because there have been, throughout history, there have been those that have, obviously, that have set out to accomplish things and it didn't work. The reason is because whatever they set out to accomplish, the first occurrence of that, the first time that thought came to them was probably not at the right time. Or they didn't have enough wisdom to work it out, or it wasn't meant to be. Yet there's more to this because, like I said, any human endeavor, any goal that you have, it's for a reason, and it started with a first thought, impulse, idea that came at a certain time. And if the time was right, then that thing is set to evolve, because everything has a life cycle, a definite point of beginning. Just like the time when we were born and took our first breath, that's the beginning of our life cycle. So if you can carefully document the exact minute when you have a particular super powerful dream, idea, urge, impulse, something that really seems like a divine calling, you can intelligently discern whether or not to actively further pursue the matter based on the time when it began with a thought, usually as an idea, right? This is important because everything that we're creatively, actively accomplishing and basically manifesting should be in accordance, should be in harmony with the cycles of life, and thus wise. And so it will work very good altogether. Okay. So I for one, I'm going to give you an example of how this. So what we're doing right now is discerning, seeking to investigate and discern using wisdom to identify whether the thought that we have is actually a divine calling that we should set out to accomplish or not. As I was saying earlier, I remember a particular dream I had years ago, many years ago. Yet it has to have been one of the most beautiful dreams that I've ever had. And it actually was this. So in my dream, I saw lush mountains, like with herbage, and there was a little bit of, it seemed like 11 a.m. somewhere in the mountains, with these mountains, these lush green hillsides. And there was a sweet, the air was as if you're breathing. It was like God was in the air, and you breathed the air, and it was absolutely the best air, the best life-giving breath, every breath you took. There was lush green mountains, and there was clouds, sort of like on a misty day at like 11 a.m. somewhere where there's still the clouds and this dew and the mist on the mountains and everything. And it was as if God was in my dream and it was all divine. And what was communicated to me and what I was seeing was that the majority of the earth, so even the mountains that I was seeing in my dream, like this green hillside and everything, that there was cannabis growing everywhere, almost everywhere. And then it was that there was world peace and a perfect world, and sort of all the good aims and aspirations of the United Nations that are in the UN Charter were like being accomplished. It was world peace, and it was a perfect world where it was like world peace, like all the best goals and aspirations and things that are written of in the UN Charter, and then basically like paradise, like heaven on earth. There was no wars or anything like that. It was just world peace. Everybody was free, safe, legit. Sort of like the ideal vision and goals and aims of the United Nations. World peace, collective security, and a healthy environment and everything. So years later, I remember this dream, and I go on Google and I type in cannabis landscapes, and I find this painting or something of basically it starts out with there's a cannabis field, lush green field, and then these green mountains in the distance in what looked like the moonlight or something, and some clouds. And it looked a lot like what I saw in my dream. So then I used this picture for an Instagram page that I invented called United Marijuanations. We called it this because it seemed like, and then based on our holy biblical studies and this thing called the healing of the nations, even of the United Nations, right? That also somewhere in Revelation it says something along the lines of that, and the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. So this idea of a perfect world being established has to do with the healing effects of safely and moderately consumed cannabis or medical marijuana, and how it heals the human. And when the human is healed, the microverse, right, the little creator, the creation and what the little creator creates in the macroverse, in his or her environment, right, is also healed. And so then, after spending a lot of time thinking about, okay, should I go to pursue further education to then get so and so many, diplomas and actually apply to work at the United Nations? That would probably take me 10 or more years in order to basically establish a rule of international morality, right? Or is there a better way to expedite the process? And you see, the motivating factor here is, as you may notice, I'm talking about a dream I had. So this dream I remember because it was so beautiful, and it seems like this is something that could be accomplished in the quote-unquote real world. It could be accomplished. And to this day, it seems to me like that would be the greatest thing that could be accomplished, because it's a combination of basically what could be described as the world to come, eternal paradise, the Garden of Eden, heaven on earth, the tikkun olam, the repair of the world, right? And then the best possible thing that anybody really could imagine, where it's world peace, collective security, rule of international morality. Now, everybody enjoys all their human rights and is able to fulfill all their responsibilities, where we have just a perfect world. Similar to what I saw in my dream. So as you may notice, the dream that I had, I still remember this to this day, and I still think about it, and I still think, how can I accomplish this? So then I thought, go step by step and just somehow begin the process. And what happened was, this resulted in the creation of an Instagram page called United Marijuanations, where it's as if that would the perfect world in these cannabis landscapes, and God is in my dream and everywhere, and it's just so peaceful, so divine, so lovely, and there's world peace, and it's a perfect world. This is something that I saw in a dream, right? And I remember it, I still remember it, and it's something that should become real. And it can become real. So you see the gap between the most divine dreams and even the sort of the dream state and the dream world, where there's divine dreams going on, and the real world. The gap is actually bridged. And it can be the case that this divine dream can be actually made a reality. And the way for that to be accomplished is actually by using wisdom to actually accomplish it. So, to this day, I still hold the vision, I still have the dream, and I still seek to actually make it a reality. And it may seem like a gigantic thing, you know, all of a sudden world peace and even cannabis growing almost everywhere. That's a lot different from how things are reported to be today. Yet, it's as if the Instagram page became like the first step, right? Where if you see the Instagram page and then you see the picture and you get the idea, it's actually becoming real. It already exists. That's the thing. The state that the world is in right now, it has to do with actually, allow me to correct that statement. We have to cover one particular important mechanism of how the world actually is the way it looks and seems in your, reality around you, is that we're creating an image of God and after His own likeness. We have divine dreams, visions, inspirations, ideas, whether that's during dark hours or the daytime. So we have divinely inspired thoughts, right? And then we think about them, eventually talk about them, and then gradually make them real, and they're manifested. So the state that now this is, every human is like a little creator who's creating into his or her environment, obviously. So it's, interestingly enough, for me as one man of God to actually change the entire world into this perfect world that I saw in a dream, it's actually possible, and I myself have the technical capability to accomplish this. It does not depend on any other humans per se, because of the fact that through the mind's eye and the dream creative visualizative mechanism that we have, the imagination also, we do have the power, because we're creating an image of God and after his own likeness. That's sufficient. We actually have the power to basically dream, visualize, think, say, and do, and actually manifest and emanate this from within out there to the point where it's real. And the first instance of that is actually the Instagram page, because you're sort of seeing an example of, you have the United Nations healed, the healing of the nations, the medicinal marijuana making the United Marijuana Nations and a peaceful, perfect world. And this also includes what is written of in terms of a tikkun olam, or the world to come. Actually, the world to come is the olam haba. Yet it's described as being eternal Garden of Eden, paradise, heaven on earth, right? The closest we can actually get to that in this time, even viewed from a so-called sort of a regular perspective, simply having to do with the idea of world peace, and then not so much even a holy biblical description, yet just a regular sort of an approach would be, you have almost every nation at the United Nations where the goal really is world peace, collective security, peaceful earth plane, rule of international morality, things in accordance with His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie the First speeches, an actual real utopia, yet very realistic. Okay, because right now still the most noble aspirations of man are enshrined in the UN Charter and in documents like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, where everybody has inalienable human rights, freedom of religion, things like slavery or bondage is forbidden. Everybody can change their religion. Everybody has the right to basic existential things such as food, housing, medical care, education, all these things, right? Just the perfect world with law and order and peace. No terrorism, none of that. All this, right? This all seems to culminate and sort of become more realistically accomplishable and actually real when you have the United Marijuana Nations rather than the United Nations. Because there has to be some type of a healing that happens that leads to a better state. And this is through the healing of the nations. So that's why it's the United Marijuana Nations. And yes, I am the Secretary General, and we approve this message. Join us. Because of the fact that, you see, okay, how could you change the world this fast, change all the politics, and basically establish the perfect world immediately? Would it be by some type of persuasion, like holding a speech, addressing the UN, holding a good speech that inspires the hearts and minds of everybody? Really, it doesn't, see, we've sort of been, how shall we say this? They tried to make us think that we have to have $1 billion, you have to be a politician or the president, or have this and this and this group of people, or these outer sort of things of the physical world to assist you to change the world. Rather, the change is within. And the thing is that what is known as tikkun olam is like repairing the world. So repairing the inner world. How is the human being repaired? It's through medical marijuana. Through the tikkun olam, repairing of the breach, with the most ancient form of medicine, that is terpene medicine, that is essentially where people do aromatherapy with cannabis. And the sweet aroma and a little bit of the smoke, it heals. It heals the human being. And thus, you have the healing of the nations, person by person, right? One person at a time. The tikkun olam, the repairing of the breach, the healing of the nations, the healing of every individual, and gradually of the nations. And so it seems like the process of actually creating a perfect world, it is possible. This process could actually be accomplished through the healing of the nations. So if you figure it like this, the United Nations, through medical marijuana and terpene medicine, aromatherapy, right? Literally, imagine hotboxing and just the good effects that it has, moderately, right? Safely, legally, that is like, so that's like the repair of every person, potentially, and then all is repaired, eventually, possibly. Now, what's actually interesting is that as I speak right now, this is important. Pay attention to this and take it to heart and adopt this method. Because as I'm thinking about this all now, I have a divine inspiration that's communicating to me, saying, the way to actually accomplish your dream and make it real, you yourself are actually powerful enough to accomplish this. It's actually through the mechanism that you've installed, where, imagine the perfect world. It would have to be operated through the UN. If the UN doesn't work right, then it has to be fixed. So the way to fix it is to fix the human beings involved. And the human beings involved, people can become healed through terpene medicine, through, let's say, aromatherapy, using cannabis, medical marijuana, because of how it calms, it relaxes, it heals, it clarifies, it rejuvenates, it gives wisdom, it gives tranquility, serenity, so many positive medicinal effects, right? So what's actually being communicated to me right now is that this route that I have sort of created is actually the right route. And another thing is, look, if we have an expectation or a hope of a perfect world, and we think, like, okay, I can do my part, I can do so and so much, yet, the government has to do it. The president has to sign the document. They have to send a peacekeeping force to that country to keep the peace. It's like, you think that there's all these outer external elements that have to be involved to accomplish it, yet based on the fact that we are creators, right? And the fact that we have, because we're created in the image of God and after his own likeness, we actually have the capacity to imagine, to dream, and to visualize this, and to actually make it real. So what I'm saying is that I can already have this a reality for myself. It doesn't depend on any other person, whether in a high position or vice versa, because based on how the universe works is that we're the creator creating, and it's enough that we have the vision and can actually make it real. So almost like if God decides to put you in heaven on earth, then that's between you and the Creator, and that's done, and it doesn't depend on somebody else's opinion or whether or not they're willing to contribute or not. It's like if God has like God has chosen you, put you in this, and given you this. It's yours. You've got it. It doesn't depend on that political figure or this body or that or this or vice versa. It's like if do you get what I'm saying in terms of that? The resource to accomplish this thing is within us. And so this is what is so impressive, because in order to have the perfect world and these cannabis landscapes and world peace and basically the most noble aspirations of man, even what's enshrined in the UN Charter, even the world to come, heaven on earth, right? From a scriptural perspective, the Garden of Eden, eternal paradise, right? The new earth, right? We already have this. We can already have it. We already have it, because it's like you have the vision, and yeah, there's 8 billion others out there, yet we've already got it. It's like we're already there. It's already real for us, and we can make it realer. So because of the material world and thinking that you have to have money or that I'd have to be like a president or a politician to do this, no, I can actually do it right now with God's help. It's like it's become real already. What I saw in my dream, I know it actually, technically this exists in some places, yet what I saw in my dream can become absolutely real in as much as I imagine, think, dream about it, visualize it, think about it, speak about it, intelligently work it out and accomplish it. It can become real. It already has taken form. So we're talking about the ability to make your divine dream a reality. The ability to make what is your divine calling accomplished. The only thing, there's one little detail in this. As always, I'm asking myself right now, is this definitely the wisest course of action? Is that really the smartest thing? And even moreover, is it clearly, actually, really God's will? Are you 101% sure that that is your divine calling, right? Because you have to know before you set out to accomplish something, ideally, for sure, that is it, okay? This has to do with the fact that if you could remember, so if you have a dream that you're seeking to make real, if you could remember what time that dream was, you could look at the daily period that was in and determine whether or not the first occurrence of that thing was at the right time and whether or not it should be further pursued. Yet obviously, based on the fact that this dream that I had was 15 or more years ago, there's some indication that it's something that should be manifested, because I keep remembering it. Yet the safest mode of action would be to clearly know what time that dream happened. So you would know when that cosmic impulse first came and know whether or not it was propitious for that to actually then be further realized, right? So in any case, the idea itself seems like a legit idea, and it's actually totally legal too. So to have cannabis landscapes everywhere and world peace, that's a good idea. The worldly format of this is that the UN would accomplish all its goals. So we'd have world peace, collective security, perfect world, right? That's like on the worldly level. Yet it seems like that from on high, the tools and the way to do this is through the United Marijuana Nations, where that's also part of the idea of the United Marijuana Nations, is that in every nation there's wild cannabis. And there's much more cannabis, for example, in agriculture, where there's all these grasslands, yet you could be farming hemp or cannabis, and it would be more beneficent for humans, plants, humans, animals, the environment, and so on. So part of the idea of the United Marijuana Nations, is to also have not a monoculture, yet rather a high amount, like a large amount of cannabis growing wild everywhere. A lot more, like the way that it used to be in ancient times, where cannabis grew, in the mountains wild, and it grew like you go out there, there's a green field, there's a grass field. Okay, well, grass is good for feed for the cows, yet it would be a lot better if you had hemp. They really like that. And it smells good. Oh, the smell of it, hallelujah. So that's part of the idea, though. Now, this is actually legal, too, according to human rights law. It's also legal according to other things having to do with the right to self-determination of peoples, and so on and so forth. So now what we would actually have to do is we have to really sit down, take a sheet of paper, take a pen, navigate, identify the windows of opportunity to accomplish step by step the different things necessary to actually instate this dream into reality. And we are actually seeing, interesting, wow, okay. Since I had this dream in 2008, actually what happened, and I wasn't even really interested in it at the time, I wasn't, burning very much then, yet we do see that, for example, there's been a decriminalization of cannabis in the USA. So there are actually places, technically, in the USA where there's outdoor cannabis plantations that are legal, and where there are actually these landscapes where I would actually see, and I'm thinking there's a chance that what'll happen is I'll have a deja vu one day where I'll actually see what I saw in my dream pretty much real. This has happened before. Okay, we got to cover this for another second. Okay. The thing called the deja vu is already seen. So what that is like you dream something, and then maybe a month later or something, or a year, you see this thing, and you remember that you saw this in your dream before for like a split second. It's a very, very interesting thing. I've begun to think that if only we could figure this one out to the detail. So if we could figure out what the working mechanism, that's a good idea. I've attempted this before. If we could figure out what the working mechanism is behind this thing known as deja vus, and let's say legitimately and wisely guide this creative process associated with it, it seems like you could change the entire real world instantaneously. The reason is this. It's because I'm going to explain to you what a deja vu is, the most common type. What has happened is I've had this happen at least 35 or more times in my life, definitely, and I clearly remember it. What it is when you go to bed, right when you start sort of starting to dream just a little bit, like you go to bed, you close your eyes, and like 15 minutes or something, you're just starting to dream. There'll be some kind of something like you'll see yourself you walking into the grocery store, looking at this and that, and thinking this. And then 20 days later, you're walking into the grocery store, and it's like the same sequence for about a second or something that you saw in your dream. This has happened to me at a minimum 30 times. Probably 20 times. A handful of times that I'm absolutely certain I can absolutely remember completely clearly that I saw something for a second in real life that I saw in a dream when I was just going to bed and just starting to dream. This has happened to me a handful of times, absolutely certain. And more than that, though, overall. So if we could figure out, because remember, we're talking about how to put our divine dream into reality completely. And this has huge proportions. This is not just like dreaming about getting a new toaster. No, it's like a dream of a totally repaired world. That's like the entire world was changed. It seems like big. But the thing is that if we could figure out the working mechanism that produces the deja vus, because I am absolutely certain that I have had deja vus that were exactly what I dreamt for like a second. You saw something, some situation in daily life that you saw in a dream. If you could figure out how to guide and coordinate this process, this creative process of the production of a deja vu and actually seeing it, you could actually rapidly, instantaneously change all of reality because of how it works, where you dream something and then you see yourself living this for real all of a sudden. Like, that is extremely powerful. Now, it happens in varying degrees. Some deja vus will be like, bam, you actually see for about a split second some kind of sequence, like somewhere, something that you literally saw in a dream 3 weeks before. I've had it happen. Now, more often, though, there'll be deja vus where it's like I was walking in the mountains, looking at the mountaintops, and then I remembered a dream I had about walking in the mountains, looking at the mountaintops, and it was very, very similar. Not exactly the same sequence, though, because the dream you're having in bed, remember that, so when you're in bed dreaming, eyes closed, you're in the psychic state or in the dream state where time, linear time, and the perception thereof, you're above time. It basically doesn't exist. That's why, like, when you wake up, right, it seems like, wow, I wonder how long that was. It seems like it was forever, yet it was like 9 hours or something. Well, many deja vus will be from when you're really in the dream state, like you've been in bed for a couple hours, it's dark, you're really dreaming, and there'll be like some segment, some part of the dream that you'll later then see for a second or something in real life. And you'll realize, wow, I saw this in a dream, and it was good, and I'm seeing it. This is great. So if you could actively guide this process, the way to do that would be through, I don't like to use the word cult, but to cultivate awareness or to focus or like to be really, really very awake and focused right now on what you're thinking what you're visualizing, what you're processing, and actually emanating from your microverse into the macroverse gradually, like to really pay attention to your thoughts and order them right, because then you would be guiding the creative process, how the dream is generated. And the interesting thing being that the same mechanism is at work when we're dreaming and actually seeing a dream, like with our eyes closed, dreaming, right? It's the same mechanism is at work right now too, although this is the awakened daytime state. The same sort of creative mind's eye, divine dreaming, visualizing, imagining mechanism is actually at work, whether it's right now, the daytime awakened state, or literally laying in bed dreaming with your eyes closed. So then you would just have to practice like focusing, like being as present as possible and actually focusing, and then like holding the vision, because right where attention goes, energy goes, right? So you'd have to focus on that thing. And this is something that some of the tantrics, like Indian mystics, do, where they dream things. So it's like you guide your dream to create. It's interesting. Yeah. Thanks for watching. Repost, reshare, and retweet this. Hashtag researching and revealing. Hashtag United Marijuanations. Hashtag UM. Thank you.